If you need help deciding whether Stellaris is the right galactic strategy game for you, this video will answer all of your questions, starting with a 60-second too long didn't read overview of the game so you can tap out early if it doesn't appeal to you. After that, we'll look at the detailed mechanics so you can get a real feel for what it's like to actually play the game, while contrasting with other games you've already played. Then we'll finish up by answering some practical questions to help you decide whether this game is worth your time and money. Starting as a species that has just developed into stellar travel, you explore and claim surrounding systems, colonizing a handful of planets that you cultivate to generate resources, which enable you to research technologies and build deadly fleets so you can devour your enemies as a hive mind or use diplomacy to unite the galaxy against the endgame crisis. You can play as humans, starting on Earth, or design a species yourself. It's a sandbox experience played alongside other human or AI empires, where no two playthroughs are the same as you race to grow faster than your neighbors, explore mysteries of long-dead civilizations, build mighty megastructures, and fight for survival. With a myriad of options, how you play is entirely up to you. So, if you enjoy empire building with endless resources and technologies, while spending hours being sucked into a galactic space opera, Stellaris might be your cup of tea. Although the collective decision-making of all empires in the galaxy makes each playthrough of Stellaris unique, the core mechanics do follow a similar pattern each time. So next we'll run through what you can expect from a typical playthrough from start to finish, explaining those core mechanics as we go before exploring some of the more niche mechanics that mix up the gameplay. When setting up your game, you can change everything from the size and shape of the galaxy, along with the number of AI empires, to the ethics and traits of your species. The combination of ethics and traits won't just tweak some background statistics, they will shape how you should approach the game and respond to the many situations you'll face. Starting with one system containing one planet, you must rush to claim neighboring systems by surveying them with a science ship, then following up with a construction ship to build a starbase to claim each system. At first, you won't know where any other empires are, so in the early game it's important to expand quickly, prioritizing systems with high resources and habitable planets. Taking systems from your neighbors by force or diplomacy won't happen for a while, so it's important to claim as many systems as possible while they're still up for grabs. Most systems have at least one resource for you to extract. In some, you can build mining stations. In others, you might be able to build a research station. But it's all a bit random, which is why you must explore quickly so you can prioritize the more valuable systems. However, as you expand, you will eventually find the real prize, a habitable planet. Different planets have different climates, and different species prefer different climates. If a planet is green, then happy days, send a colony ship. You can colonize a yellow planet, but you'll have slower growth and less resource output, which is understandable considering they can't breathe properly. Later in the game, through research, you can terraform planets to a more preferable climate, and you'll also have access to other species through migration treaties. So throughout the game, you'll colonize most planets eventually. Which is vitally important because planets are your main source of production. Whether that's minerals to build with, energy credits for upkeep costs and trading, food and consumer goods to keep your population happy and working, alloys to build a powerful navy, or research to, research. On each planet, you construct districts and buildings, which for the most part follow a logical pattern of build this to get more of that. Just beware that most buildings consume at least one resource in order to produce at least one other. So a bit like in Anno 1800, striking the balance between consumption and production is a key part of the game, and is one of the first real challenges a new player will face. However, none of these buildings or districts are any good without workers in them. Constructing districts and buildings creates job vacancies, jobs that need to be filled by that planet's population, otherwise known as POPs. A new colony starts with one POP and grows over time, but eventually you can build robots or grow clones to increase the rate of growth. Plus, robots are less fussy about needing food and life satisfaction in general. There are 3 tiers of jobs available on each planet. rulers, specialists, and basic bitch workers. Generally speaking, a specialist will produce higher value resources by consuming the basic resources produced by the workers below them. But if a specialist job is vacant because you've constructed a new building, a basic worker will promote themselves into that role, leaving their basic job unfilled, which may upset the balance of consumption versus production, again reminiscent of the worker tiers in Anno 1800. But as long as you create new jobs at the same rate new pops are created, you'll ensure there's full employment without any gaps in your workforce. And this is before we get into migration between planets. But once all star systems are taken, borders are established, and you've colonized your first few planets, what then? It's time for diplomatic relations, to uncover some mysteries of the universe, perhaps a cheeky war or two, and to science the shit out of the galaxy. Whenever one of your ships encounters another species for the first time, a multi-stage first contact event is initiated. You assign an envoy who will decode their language, and generally you'll size each other up, eventually opening up formal diplomatic relations. You'll be meeting a lot of AI empires, and there are a ton of diplomatic options to choose from. There are trade deals, migration treaties, non-aggression pacts, defensive pacts, making claims on other empires' systems before you go to war. You can subjugate weaker neighbors. You can build up a spy network to gain all sorts of intel, and that's all before we even get to creating a federation and the Galactic Senate. Pacts and alliances are absolutely key to survival, and you'll likely switch allegiances multiple times as your neighbors grow stronger or your ally loses a war. While not perfect, diplomacy is a big part of Stellaris, if you want it to be. Unless, of course, you're a devouring swarm that's more interested in eating everything than talking to people. Stellaris does have some RTS elements, but you basically point and click, then watch your fleets battle it out. You can research and build a variety of ships, but ultimately Stellaris is a race to see who can build the biggest doom stack of fleets. The ship designer allows you to customize design templates for your ships by swapping various weapons, armor, engines, and more into a number of slots to ensure they're as effective as possible. There's a sort of rock, paper, scissors approach to weapons versus defenses on your ships, so you can optimize your ship designs based on the enemy that you're facing in a way that's not dissimilar to division templates in Hearts of Iron. Although combat on the ground isn't a huge feature, worlds do have defensive garrisons, and you need to overcome them with assault armies to conquer that planet. Plus, you can bombard planets from orbit. Space stations can be upgraded to protect choke points in the hyperlane network, and they are highly customizable with slots for all sorts of buildings that are by no means just for military purposes. The tech tree in Stellaris is insane. It's huge, and you can't rush your way to a high-level tech because the game presents you with a few options for your next item of research, which may mean waiting for the one you really want. Researching technology that increases the rate at which you research technology is so addictive, you'll likely forget to build a fleet to defend your feeble scientists from the parasitic overmind next door. Been there, done it, many times. Particularly in the early and mid-game, your scientists are constantly uncovering and investigating mysteries from long-dead empires, or from natural phenomena, many of which are multi-stage discoveries that can yield powerful rewards for seeing them through. They are effectively text adventures with artwork and sound effects that enrich that feeling of discovery, danger, and scientific wonder, and it's powerful if you take the time to read the text, or if you can't be bothered, just click whichever option gives you the resource you want, and that's cool too. So if you do manage to claim a lot of systems, build up your economy, make some friends, and destroy some enemies along the way, without getting killed yourself, what does the endgame for Stellaris actually look like? Technically, there comes a point where the game just stops, and whichever empire has the strongest statistics will win the game. But what's more likely is you will get absolutely destroyed by the endgame crisis. There are several of them, and they are fully customizable before you start the game, but much like in Total War Warhammer, essentially a very strong enemy will arrive in the galaxy, with insanely powerful fleets, and like an infection, it will spread until everything is destroyed. What's so awesome about this part of the game is that it gives the remaining empires an enemy to rally against. Your once mighty empire, having risen from one single system to ruling half the galaxy, is reduced to fighting alongside previous adversaries in a last stand with whatever remains of your once glorious fleet. Now that's how to end a game. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, there's also a way for you to become the endgame crisis against your friends too. Those are the major elements that you'll be wrestling with during a standard playthrough of Stellaris, but honestly there is so much more to include. So what I'll do now is take you through a quick-fire list of the other notable features that enrich a game of Stellaris. First up, we have Megastructures, which are huge multi-stage projects that require massive investment but provide some game-changing bonuses. You could build a ring world, a Dyson sphere, or a quantum bloody catapult that literally slingshots your ships to the other side of the galaxy. I've already mentioned a bunch of different resources, but there are a whole lot more. Strategic resources are rare and key for more advanced ships and buildings. Even rarer are special resources that are key to doing some weird things like constructing a Star Eater, or harnessing dark matter for weapons and defenses. There are even more abstract resources, such as influence to maintain diplomatic pacts, and unity to make powerful decisions within your government. You select leaders for your government, admirals for your fleet, and scientists for your, well, science. They each have different skills that develop over time, and they grow old and eventually die, taking all their skills with them. The selfish bastards. You can issue edicts across your empire that have powerful effects. If you think someone is about to invade you, select Fortify the Border to increase construction speed of your defenses, or introduce subsidies for various resources to help plug a gap. Some edicts have both positive and negative effects, and are yet another tool available to help you min-max your empire. Trade value is an interesting resource that appears throughout your empire, but particularly centered on your worlds. You strategically place upgraded star bases to capture this trade, which then flows towards your capital. Trade value can be an incredibly large source of income, and vital to maintain a large fleet, but the flow of trade attracts piracy, encouraging you to set up patrols of your smaller, more agile ships along trade routes to catch the pirates. There are a myriad of planetary features, from bountiful plains to crystal forests, that give each world a unique identity and have a real impact on the natural resources and what you can actually build there. And planet size is also a big factor when deciding which planets to expand towards and claim in the early game. When the Galactic Community is established, it lifts the veil on where everybody is in the galaxy. If you're part of the community, you vote on resolutions that affect everyone in the community. They could be good for your empire, or bad. That's democracy. But you can throw a hissy fit and leave if you feel the resolutions are having a negative effect on your empire. But everyone will hate you for leaving. The size of your empire adds to your diplomatic weight, which translates into how much your vote matters. You can assign envoys to increase your diplomatic weight, or call in some favors, or spend some influence. You get the idea. Fallen empires are randomly placed in the galaxy for you to bump into at some point. Their empire is already established, and they're very powerful from the beginning of the game, but they are effectively dormant at first. In the early game, there's very little you can do apart from expand around them, and this is where it gets interesting. The Fallen Empires are a good example of how well Stellaris paces the game, as they are essentially a mid-game consideration. Eventually, the Fallen Empires will awaken, and if there are two of them, you may end up with a war in heaven where two Goliaths fight to the death, and you have to choose a side, all but guaranteeing that the whole galaxy will be drawn into conflict. You can set designations on each world to boost their production of a certain resource, encouraging you to specialize worlds and sectors. You can build habitats off-world to expand your living space and generally play tall. There are factions in your empire that represent different ethics. Keeping them happy produces unity, but they also present a way of changing your empire's ethics if you decide to promote and embrace one of them. And you can even change the genetic makeup of your species to add or remove their various traits. Finally, I have to pay tribute to the soundtrack, as it's bloody marvellous. A good soundtrack is essential when playing a grand strategy game that will have you sitting there for hours, scratching your head and occasionally pulling out your hair, and Stellaris delivers a masterful soundtrack in abundance. I'm sure you've gathered that Stellaris is a big game, which raises some questions about the time commitment required, so let's address that, along with some other practical issues, starting with most games of Stellaris are a sandbox, skirmish-like experience that you can either play on your own versus the AI, or you can play online with strangers if you have a spare 6 hours, or you can play with friends, which has recently become a whole lot easier. They've created a co-op mode where a group of you can manage the same empire, which I highly recommend as the best way of learning the game, especially if you know someone who can explain the mechanics to you. The short answer is yes. The in-game tutorial is decent, but prepare for the first 5 hours to be as overwhelming as they are fun. The learning never really stops either, even for experienced players, which is actually part of the fun. You'll need to set aside a good few hours for a session and a few sessions to complete an average playthrough, but it can last much longer if you want it to. You can pause, slow down, and speed up the gameplay as you gain experience, but ultimately, 5 hours will feel like 5 minutes, as real-life responsibilities become an increasingly inconvenient distraction. The player numbers on Steam show how popular this game is all these years after its initial release. The developers are constantly updating the base game for free, which has seen some serious changes over the years, mostly for the better, so even without a DLC or mod, you will notice changes that keep things fresh. The base game is often on sale with a 75% discount, so all you need to know is never pay full price for Stellaris and never feel rushed into buying the game, as the next sale is never far away. Stellaris has a ton of DLCs. Galactic Paragons adds depth to your council. In Nemesis, you can become the endgame crisis, which is mental. Federations expands diplomacy. Megacorp, you can probably guess what that's about, and there's a bunch of species and story packs to add more depth to species creation, etc. Most of the DLCs are fantastic, but never pay full price, and don't be tempted to buy the DLCs when you first buy the base game. Rest assured that the base game is so big and is updated so regularly for free that DLCs will just add unnecessary complication to the initial learning curve. There's obviously Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and basically anything else along those lines. There are mods to make the game prettier and to make it run smoother. There are UI overhauls and just thousands upon thousands of up-to-date mods for you to enjoy. So if Stellaris does get its hooks into you, longevity won't ever be a problem. So, is Stellaris right for you today? The single biggest deciding factor is whether the space setting interests you. If that doesn't put you off, and you enjoy other games by Paradox, you'll fall in love with Stellaris. If you already enjoy other space-themed grand strategy titles, such as Galactic Civilizations or Endless Space, you'll love Stellaris too. If you enjoy Total War games, there are many similar mechanics in Stellaris, so provided you're happy to be less in control of your armies and to have a ton more depth in the empire management, then you will probably love Stellaris. If you enjoy RTS games with a focus on economic gameplay, or to a lesser extent city builders, there's a lot for you to like too. The learning curve is daunting for those who have never played a grand strategy game before. However, if you like Star Wars or Star Trek, then Stellaris is probably the best game for your first step into the grand strategy genre. Because even if you don't understand what you're doing half the time, the game is insanely epic throughout, and to be honest, being good at the game doesn't really matter. If you do decide to buy the game, feel free to check out my tips and tricks for beginners video linked in the description. I'll probably do a separate DLC guide too, and please let the rest of us know if you're enjoying the game in the comments below. If you did get value out of the video, please leave a like as it makes a huge difference growing the channel, and feel free to check out my other video reviews too. See ya!